Dad, the christening was yesterday. We only invited the most important people in our lives. My daughter Jessica's words cut through the phone like a cold blade straight to my chest. I was sitting in my favorite armchair, the same one where I used to read stories to her as a child, holding the phone as if he weighed 100 pounds. The most important people. For 3 years, I had paid the $800 monthly rent for his apartment. I bought every piece of furniture in that house. I filled the refrigerator when they didn't even have bread to eat. I paid the medical bills when my 2-year-old grandson got sick. I financed the car my son-in-law drove to work. But I wasn't an important person. My name is Bruce. I'm 68 years old, I've been a widower for 5 years, and I just found out that I was excluded from his only grandson's christening. The boy I helped raise since he was born, who called me grandpa with that toothless smile that melted my heart. Dad, are you still there? Jessica's voice sounded impatient, as if my pain was an inconvenience in her schedule. I'm here, I replied with a calmness that even I didn't know where it came from. Look, it was a very small ceremony. Just family. You understand, right? Just family. As if he wasn't the man who raised his daughter alone after his mother died of cancer when Jessica was 16. As if I weren't the one who worked double shifts at the factory to pay for her college. As if I weren't the one who wiped her tears when she got pregnant at 23 and he threatened to abandon her. Of course, Jessica. I understand perfectly. What she didn't realize from my calm voice was that I really did understand. I finally understood that my daughter and son-in-law Kevin saw me not as a loving father and grandfather, but as a personal bank with feelings. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall full of photographs. Jessica on graduation day, the dress he paid $400 for. My grandson's baby shower, where I had paid for the entire party. Little Timothy's first birthday, when I spent over $1,000 on gifts and decorations. In all these photos, I was smiling proudly alongside my family. But now, looking at them with new eyes, I noticed something I should have noticed before. Jessica and Kevin only looked directly at me when they were asking for money. The phone rang again. It was Jessica. Dad, since we're talking, I need to tell you something. Kevin lost his job last week and... I waited for her to finish her sentence, but the silence stretched on. And what, Jessica? The rent is due tomorrow. It's $800, as usual. As usual. For 36 months in a row. $28,800 in rent alone. Not to mention furniture, food, medical emergencies, gifts, baby clothes. Dad? Are you going to make the transfer today? For the first time in 3 years, the question hung in the air. I'll think about it, Jessica. What do you mean, think about it? Dad, we depend on this. Timothy needs to eat, he needs diapers. Timothy needs a lot of things, I agreed. Especially a father who works and a mother who doesn't treat his own father like an ATM. Jessica laughed nervously. Dad, you're being dramatic. We love you. You know you're important to us. Important enough to be at my grandson's christening? The silence on the other end was deafening. Dad, I already explained. Explain it again, Jessica. Explain how I'm not important enough to see my grandson being christened, but I'm important enough to pay his bills. That's not how it works, Dad. You're twisting everything. I hung up the phone again, but this time I turned it off completely. For 3 years, I had been the perfect father, the understanding father-in-law, the generous grandfather who never complained when they needed help. Always available, always paying, always smiling. But yesterday, when my grandson received God's blessings in his first religious ceremony, I was at home alone, watching television, not even knowing that the most sacred moment of the child's life was happening. While I was financing his life entirely, he was building family memories that I was not a part of. It finally dawned on me. If he's following this story of family manipulation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how this situation will unfold. I got up from the armchair and went to his office. He opened the drawer where he kept all the bank transfer receipts from the last 3 years. $42,600. That was the exact amount of his wasted generosity. $42,600 that he had taken from his retirement fund, from the money his late wife Sarah had left him so he could live out his final years in peace. He picked up his phone and called the bank. Hello, this is Bruce Morrison. I need to cancel all automatic transfers scheduled on my account. What Jessica and Kevin didn't know was that her source of income had just dried up. And when they found out, the war for her dignity was just beginning. The next morning, when the alarm clock rang at 6 o'clock, my first reaction was to check my cell phone. 17 missed calls from Jessica and 9 messages from Kevin. All with the same desperate tone I knew so well. "Dad, what's going on? The transfer didn't come through to our account. Bruce, I need you to call me urgently. Timothy is out of diapers. Dad, please don't do this to us. We're a family." Family. The word had completely lost its meaning for me in the last 24 hours. He got up, made his morning coffee, and sat on the back porch, where he used to have breakfast with his late wife Helen. She always said that Jessica had a manipulative side since she was a child, but he never wanted to believe it. Helen saw through the crocodile tears and self-serving hugs our daughter used to get what she wanted. "Bruce, that girl will suck his dry if he lets her," Helen warned me in the last months of her life, when he was too weak to argue but still lucid enough to recognize patterns. I thought she was being too harsh. Now I realized she was being prophetic. The phone rang again. This time it was Kevin, my 27-year-old son-in-law who had never worked anywhere for more than 6 months straight. A man who considered manual labor beneath his qualifications and part-time jobs a waste of time. "Bruce, man, we need to talk. Jessica is hysterical here." "Good morning, Kevin. How's my grandson?" "Oh, Timothy's fine, but look, what was that about yesterday? You canceled our assistance without warning? Man, that's not fair. We depend on that money." Depend. As if he were an invalid incapable of supporting his own family. "Kevin, how many jobs have you looked for this week?" Silence. "Kevin. Man, you know the market is tough. And with Timothy so young, Jessica needs his help at home. Jessica needs you working. Timothy needs a father who sets an example of responsibility. Bruce, let's not start this again. You always promised you'd help us until I found something better." Something better. For 3 years, Kevin rejected dozens of job offers because they were too temporary, paid too little, or offered no growth. Meanwhile, I worked overtime at 68 to maintain his standard of living. "Kevin, you have a college degree, you're young and healthy. Explain to me why you need a 68-year-old man's retirement money." "Man, it's not like that. We'll pay it all back when I get settled." Pay it back. In 3 years, they had never paid back a single dollar. Every loan automatically became a permanent gift. "Kevin, put Jessica on." "Bruce." My daughter's voice sounded tearful, dramatically fragile. "Dad, what's going on? Why are you doing this to us?" "Jessica, answer me one question. When was the last time he called me just to see how I was doing?" "Dad, I always ask how he is." "When was the last time you called me without asking for money?" The silence stretched on for a full 20 seconds. "Dad, you're being unfair. Of course I care about his well-being. If you care about his well-being, why didn't you invite me to his grandson's christening?" "Dad, I already explained that. It was a small ceremony." "Jessica, how many people were there?" "About 20 people." "Were 20 people too important to include the child's grandfather?" "It's not like that, Dad. You're twisting everything." I grabbed my tablet and opened Instagram. There were the photos from the christening, proudly posted by Jessica at 10 o'clock yesterday morning, while I was at home watching television, unaware that my grandson was being christened. I counted the people in the photos. 32. Not 20. "Jessica, I'm looking at the photos on his Instagram. I counted 32 people." "Dad, some of them were just acquaintances who showed up." I saw the photo of the toast. Kevin is giving a speech thanking all the family and special friends who were present to witness this sacred moment in Timothy's life. All the family and special friends, Jessica. More silence. "Dad, you're complicating everything. The issue now is that we don't have money for the rent." And there it was. The conversation always came back to money. Never to relationships, never to feelings, never to real family. Always to money. "Jessica, how many years do you plan to live off his cost?" "Dad, it's not off his cost. It's family help. That's what families do for each other." "And what do you do for me in return?" What do you mean? What do you do for me, Jessica? What kind of help do I get from this family? Dad, we love you. You have a beautiful grandson. You're part of our lives. I'm part of your lives, but not his christening. Dad, stop repeating that. I'll keep repeating it until you understand the gravity of what you've done to me. You excluded me from the most sacred moment of his grandson's life, but you include me when you need to pay the bills. Jessica started to cry. It wasn't a cry of regret or guilt. It was a cry of frustration from someone who wasn't getting what he wanted. Dad, are you going to let his grandson go without because of a misunderstanding? His grandson will not go without. You two are going to get jobs and raise his son as responsible adults. Dad, you can't do that. We have nowhere to go. Jessica, you're 25. Kevin is 27. You are fully capable adults. But Dad, you always said we could count on you. For real emergencies. Not to finance a lifetime of laziness and ingratitude. Dad, you're being cruel. Cruel was excluding me from his grandson's christening after 3 years of fully financing his life. I hung up the phone and put it on silent mode. I walked to the office and picked up my folder with all the receipts again. $42,600 in 3 years. Money that Helen had left for his retirement, which I had wasted supporting 2 adult bums. I remembered the last serious conversation I had with Helen before she died. Bruce, promise me you won't let Jessica drain all our savings. Promise him you'll live out your last years with dignity. I had promised. And broken that promise every day for the last 3 years. But yesterday, when Jessica said that I wasn't special enough to be present at his own grandson's christening, something inside him died. The silly, generous father who always paid the bills without question. And something new was born in its place. A man who finally understood that love cannot be bought and dignity cannot be negotiated. Jessica and Kevin were about to find out who Bruce Morrison was when he stopped being a walking bank and started being a man with limits. The phone rang again. This time, I let it ring until the answering machine picked up. The war had officially begun. And they had no idea what was coming. 3 days after cutting off the funding, I discovered that Jessica and Kevin had escalated the situation far beyond what I had imagined. The doorbell rang at 7:30 in the morning, and through the window I saw a man in a gray suit with a briefcase in his hand. Mr. Morrison? I'm Dr. Richard Hayes, the family lawyer. Your daughter is concerned about his mental health and has asked me to assess his ability to make financial decisions. My first reaction was to laugh. A lawyer. They had hired a lawyer. Dr. Hayes, my mental health is perfectly fine. So is my ability to make decisions. And my decision is to stop financially supporting 2 lazy adults. Mr. Morrison, I understand his frustration, but abruptly cutting off financial support for a family with a small child could be interpreted as erratic behavior or the onset of senile dementia. The words hit me like punches. Senile dementia. They were trying to have me declared incompetent. Dr. Hayes, she's worked for 45 years, she ran a small business for 20 years before retiring, she pays all her bills on time, she drives, she cooks, and she keeps her house impeccably clean. What signs of dementia are you seeing? Well, erratic financial behavior is one of the first indicators. Personality changes as well. Her daughter mentioned that his has been hostile and paranoid. Hostile and paranoid. For refusing to be a walking bank. Dr. Hayes, how about we talk about the $42,600 I've spent over the last 3 years completely supporting a family of 3 healthy people? He consulted her notes. That demonstrates exactly the point, Mr. Morrison. Uncontrolled spending is another classic sign. Uncontrolled spending to help my own daughter? Depending on the family's financial situation, yes. I picked up my folder with all the receipts and placed it on the living room table. Dr. Hayes, here are all the receipts. $800 a month in rent for 36 months. Furniture, appliances, medical bills, car insurance, groceries, baby clothes. All documented. Now explain to me which part of this is uncontrolled spending. He leafed through the documents with growing discomfort. Mr. Morrison, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here because his family is genuinely concerned. His family is concerned about money, not me. It was at this moment that I realized this was not an isolated visit. Jessica and Kevin were building a case against me. A legal case to declare me incompetent and take control of his finances. After Dr. Hayes left, I called my younger sister Linda, who lived in Seattle. Bruce? What a surprise. How are you? Linda, I need to tell you something. Jessica excluded me from Timothy's christening. Absolute silence. Bruce, are you serious? Completely serious. And now they've hired a lawyer because I stopped giving them money. Bruce, that's terrible. I always thought Jessica was a bit of a gold digger, but this is beyond the pale. Linda, do you remember the last time Jessica called you? Let me think. It was last Christmas. And she spent the entire call complaining that you hadn't given him enough money to buy better gifts for Timothy. She complained to you that I didn't give enough money? Bruce, she said that he had only given $2,000 for Christmas and that they needed at least another $1,000 to buy everything he had planned. $2,000 for Christmas wasn't enough. For a 2-year-old. Linda, did she call anyone else in the family to complain about me? She called her cousin Margaret in Denver. She said that he was becoming stingy in his old age and that they were considering moving away because he wasn't supporting them enough financially. My own daughter was telling the whole family that I was a bad father for not giving enough money, while I was paying literally every bill of her life. Bruce, what are you going to do? I'm going to protect myself, Linda. I'm going to protect myself in a way he'll never expect. After hanging up, I called my accountant, Gerald Peterson, who had been handling my finances for 15 years. Bruce. How are you, my friend? Gerald, I need a complete audit of all the expenses I've incurred with Jessica over the past 3 years. Okay. May I ask why? They want to declare him incompetent to take control of his money. Bruce, this is serious. He needs legal protection. That's exactly what he's thinking. Bruce, during all these years of taking care of her finances, I can tell you that the expenses with Jessica have always worried me. $800 a month in rent, plus $500 to $600 in other expenses. For a family that never showed any signs of trying to become independent. Gerald, do you have everything documented? I have everything. And Bruce, there's something you may not know. Jessica asked for information about her accounts 3 months ago. What do you mean? She called saying she was concerned about his expenses and asked if he could afford to continue helping them. She asked specifically about the total amount of her savings. And what did you say? I said that this information was confidential and that she should talk to her directly. Jessica had been investigating my financial situation for 3 months. She had probably been planning this move for a long time. Gerald, I want you to prepare a complete report. Every penny spent on them, every transfer, every gift. Everything. Bruce, may I suggest that you seek out a lawyer who specializes in elder law? I know an excellent one. Get in touch with him. That afternoon, I received a call from my neighbor across the street, Harold Peterson, a 72-year-old retired policeman. Bruce, I need to tell you something. Yesterday Jessica was here asking about his behavior. What kind of questions? If I had noticed him acting strangely, if he was taking good care of the house, if he was driving normally. She asked if I thought you needed help. And what did you say? I said he's the most responsible neighbor she's ever had. That her house is always spotless, he's punctual, polite, and even helps her with small repairs when she needs it. Harold, did she ask anything else? She asked if I thought you were competent to live alone or if you needed supervision. Jessica was collecting statements from neighbors to build a case of incompetence. She was literally investigating my mental capacity through my neighbors. Harold, did he tell anyone else about this? I told my wife Dolores. She was outraged. She said that Jessica always looked like a gold digger. At that moment, I had a revelation. Jessica wasn't just trying to emotionally blackmail me into giving her money again. She was systematically building a legal case to declare me incompetent and take complete control of my finances. This was no longer about late rent or a spoiled child's tantrum. This was an attempted legal coup orchestrated by her own daughter. I called the lawyer Gerald had recommended. Mr. Morrison, this is Robert Chun, an elder protection specialist. Gerald explained her situation to me. We need to meet immediately. Mr. Chun, Can he really have me declared incompetent? If they can get enough evidence and a sympathetic judge, yes. But from what Gerald has told me, you have more ammunition against them than he has against you. Ammunition. Mr. Morrison, financial exploitation of the elderly is a federal crime. $42,000 in 3 years from a single source, while refusing to work, can be classified as systematic abuse. For the first time in days, I smiled. Mr. Chun, when can we meet? Tomorrow at 9 in the morning. And Mr. Morrison? Bring all the documents you have. I hung up the phone and looked out the window. Jessica and Kevin thought they had me cornered. They thought they could intimidate me with legal threats and turn my generosity into evidence of dementia. But what they didn't know was that he had spent 40 years running a small business, dealing with contracts, lawyers, and complex legal situations. And for the past 3 years, while they played family at his expense, he had documented every penny spent. They wanted a legal war? They would get a legal war. But it would be a war he couldn't win. Because when you try to take down someone who is on the side of the law, morality, and documentation, you're usually the one who ends up getting taken down. Jessica and Kevin were about to find out that old Bruce Morrison wasn't just a silly grandfather with an open wallet. He was a man with 40 years of experience protecting what was his. And now, my freedom and dignity were under attack. The game had changed completely. And I was ready to play it. The next morning, I met Robert Chen at 9 o'clock sharp at his office in the city center. He was an Asian American man in his 40s, with a kind of calm presence that immediately inspired confidence. Mr. Morrison, I've reviewed all the documentation Gerald sent me. We have a solid case against your sons for financial exploitation of the elderly. But they are also building a case against him. I placed my briefcase on his desk. Mr. Chun, I've managed a small business for 20 years. I know how to document evidence and build arguments. What they don't know is that I've been preparing my defense since I discovered her true intentions. I opened my briefcase and revealed something even Gerald didn't know she had: recordings. Mr. Morrison, these are recordings of all telephone conversations from the last 6 months. Perfectly legal in our state, as long as one party is aware of the recording. Chin listened to the first recordings with growing disbelief. Jessica clearly manipulating situations to create financial emergencies. Kevin refusing job offers while demanding more money. Both of them discussing among themselves how to make him feel guilty in order to increase the transfer amounts. Mr. Morrison, this is pure gold. But is there one recording in particular that is mentioned? The recording of the call about the christening. I played back the entire conversation. Jessica's coldness in saying that I wasn't a special person. The immediate transition to the request for money. The total lack of remorse or acknowledgement of the pain she had caused. Mr. Chun, this recording clearly shows that he sees me only as a source of income, not as a person. Mr. Morrison, with this material, we can not only defend ourselves, but counterattack. Financial exploitation of the elderly can result in fines of up to $500,000 and up to 5 years in prison. But I had more cards up my sleeve than Chun realized. Mr. Chun, during his 20 years as an entrepreneur, he has learned that information is power. And he has collected a lot of information. He revealed his second strategy, a complete financial investigation of Jessica and Kevin. I hired a private investigator to track all his expenses over the past 3 years. He is living a lifestyle far beyond what my money alone could support. The investigator's report was devastating. Jessica had lied about her finances. In addition to my money, he was fraudulently receiving welfare, declaring zero income while I transferred $800 a month plus extra expenses. Mr. Morrison, that's federal fraud. He could face very serious criminal charges. Exactly. But there's more. I showed Chin a series of photographs the investigator had obtained. Jessica and Kevin spending money at expensive restaurants, buying designer clothes, frequenting casinos on the local Indian reservation. While they were telling me Timothy needed diapers, they were betting $50 a hand at blackjack. Chen shook his head, impressed. Mr. Morrison, how many years did he say he managed a company? 20 years. And in that time, I learned that people who lie about small things always lie about big things too. My third strategy was even more calculated. I had created a network of informants without Jessica and Kevin realizing it. Mr. Chun, for the past 3 months, while they were investigating my mental capacity through the neighbors, I was investigating his character through the people who really knew him. I had spoken to the owner of his apartment, who revealed multiple late rent payments even though I was paying on time. He was pocketing my money and paying the rent late to generate fines that he then charged me as emergencies. I spoke with Timothy's daycare, which confirmed that Jessica was often late picking up her son because she was busy. Busy spending my money on leisure activities. Mr. Morrison, you've built a case that any prosecutor would love to have. But my most brilliant strategy was yet to come. Mr. Chun, they want to declare me incompetent? Perfect. Let he try. I explained my plan. I had secretly undergone a full battery of cognitive tests at 3 different medical institutions. Not just the tests that Chen had recommended, but also neurological evaluations, memory tests, and even a full psychiatric evaluation. All the results show not only normal competence, but above-average competence for my age. I have 3 independent medical opinions confirming my perfect mental health. If you're following this story of a grandfather being manipulated by her own family, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see how this legal battle unfolds. Chin smiled for the first time since we met. Mr. Morrison, you're not just playing chess while they play checkers. You're playing 3-dimensional chess. Mr. Chun, 40 years ago he learned that in the business war, whoever has the best information wins. This is no different. But I still had one last card up my sleeve. Mr. Chen, Jessica and Kevin made a fatal mistake. They involved her 2-year-old grandson in her manipulation. I showed Chen photographs that the investigator had taken of Timothy at daycare. The child was visibly neglected. Dirty clothes, unkempt hair, clear signs that he was not receiving adequate care at home. While spending my money on personal luxuries, they were neglecting the well-being of the child who supposedly needed my financial help. Mr. Morrison, this could result in loss of custody. Exactly. If he wants to use Timothy as an emotional weapon against me, he's going to find out that 2 people can play that game. That afternoon, I implemented phase 2 of my plan. I called Linda in Seattle and asked for a favor that would change everything. Linda, I need you to come here next week. Bruce, of course. But why? Because I'm going to need a witness when Jessica and Kevin discover that they completely underestimated old Bruce Morrison. I also called Harold, my former police officer neighbor, and told her about Jessica's attempts to gather evidence against me through his. Harold, I need you to document every attempt they've made to manipulate his testimony. Bruce, that's attempted obstruction of justice. They're trying to fabricate evidence. Exactly. And when this comes out in court, it will be clear who is really acting unscrupulously. During the rest of the week, Jessica called 12 times. All calls were recorded. In each one, her tried a different approach: dramatic pleas, veiled threats, emotional blackmail using Timothy. Dad, Timothy asked about Grandpa. He doesn't understand why you're being so cruel to us. A 2-year-old asking about complex financial issues. The manipulation was becoming increasingly desperate and obvious. Kevin also tried his own approach, calling to try to intimidate her. Bruce, you don't know who you're messing with. We have lawyers too. And we have rights. Kevin, what kind of rights do healthy adults have to an elderly person's retirement money? The right not to be abandoned by family. Family doesn't abandon family, Kevin. Family doesn't exclude Grandpa from his grandson's christening. Each conversation revealed more about her true motivations and strengthened my case. On Friday of that week, Chen called me with news that changed everything. Mr. Morrison, they've accelerated the schedule. They've filed the petition to declare him incompetent. The hearing will be next Monday. They're desperate, I replied calmly. Desperate people make mistakes. Mr. Morrison, you seem very confident for someone facing a mental competency hearing. Mr. Chun, I've spent the entire week preparing not only my defense, but the most comprehensive counterattack an elder law attorney has ever had the chance to present. What do you mean? That on Monday, Jessica and Kevin will discover they tried to manipulate the wrong man. And when the hearing is over, I will not only have retained my financial independence. I paused for a moment, feeling the weight of 40 years of business experience and 68 years of her life finally converging in a single moment of justice. I will have ensured that they can never try this again with any other senior citizen. Because when I'm done with him, they'll be facing federal criminal charges. The game had changed completely. And Monday would be the day Bruce Morrison reminded the world that experience and wisdom always beat youth and arrogance. Monday arrived with a light rain that seemed to foreshadow a storm. At 9 in the morning, I was in the county courthouse, wearing his best navy blue suit, the same one he wore to the most important meetings at his company. Linda had arrived from Seattle the night before and was standing next to me, holding my hand with the strength of someone who understood that this battle was about much more than money. "Bruce, are you ready for this?" Robert Chun asked, rearranging his documents for the third time. "Chun, I spent 40 years preparing for this moment without knowing it." Across the hall, Jessica was sitting with Kevin and Dr. Hayes, the lawyer they had hired. She glanced at me once and quickly looked away. Kevin, on the other hand, stared at me with his usual arrogance, as if he were still the favorite son-in-law who never had to work a day in his life. When we entered the courtroom, Judge Martin Patterson was already in his chair. A 60-year-old man with a reputation for being impartial and meticulous. This court is convened to evaluate David Morrison's petition against Bruce Morrison, alleging mental incapacity to manage financial affairs. Dr. Hayes stood up first, confident as a man who thought he had a simple case. "Your Honor, my client, Jessica Morrison, is genuinely concerned about her father's mental decline. Bruce Morrison, 68, has exhibited erratic financial behavior, increasing paranoia, and social isolation that suggest the onset of senile dementia." He presented his evidence: her refusal to continue transferring money, the installation of the security system, the fabricated statements from neighbors. "Furthermore, Your Honor, Mr. Morrison has refused to cooperate with medical evaluations, which we interpret as another sign of cognitive decline." When it was his turn, he stood up with the calmness of a man who knew exactly where he was stepping. "Your Honor, this is not a petition born of genuine family concern. This is an attempt at financial exploitation of the elderly disguised as care." Chun began by playing the recording of the call about the christening. Jessica's cold voice saying that I wasn't special enough echoed through the courtroom. I saw Jessica turn pale as her own words condemned her. "Your Honor, this recording was made the day before the first attempt to cut off financial support." Note how, in the same call, after humiliating his father by excluding him from his grandson's christening, Ms. Morrison immediately asks for money. Chun then presented something that made Kevin shift nervously in his chair: the private investigator's report. "Your Honor, while claiming extreme financial need, the petitioners were regularly frequenting casinos, spending an average of $200 a night on gambling." Photographs of Jessica and Kevin at the casino, dated and time-stamped, were presented as evidence. Jessica in a $300 dress, Kevin drinking $50 whiskey. "Furthermore, Your Honor, we discovered that he was committing federal fraud." Chun presented the welfare documents. Kevin and Jessica had declared zero income to receive benefits, while I transferred nearly $1,000 a month to her accounts. Dr. Hayes' face was getting redder and redder as he realized his case was falling apart. "But there's more, Your Honor." Chun played the recording where Kevin refused job offers, claiming that it was beneath her qualifications to work in supermarkets or restaurants. This is a 27-year-old man with a degree in business administration who considers honest work degrading, but finds it perfectly acceptable to live off the retirement money of a 68-year-old. It was when Chun played his final card that the entire room fell silent. "Your Honor, I present 3 independent medical evaluations of Mr. Bruce Morrison, all conducted within the last 15 days. The medical documents confirmed not only his mental competence, but above-average scores on all cognitive tests. Dr. Amanda Foster, neurologist at Regional Hospital, Dr. Michael Chong, psychiatrist at Mental Health Clinic, and Dr. Linda Rodriguez, geriatrician specializing in dementia, all concluded that Bruce Morrison is of sound mind and that there are no signs of cognitive decline." Jessica finally looked at him directly. For the first time since this war began, I saw real fear in his eyes. Dr. Hayes tried one last desperate gambit. "Your Honor, even if Mr. Morrison is mentally competent, abruptly cutting off financial support for a family with a small child shows cruelty and poor judgment." That was my cue. Chun called me to testify. "Mr. Morrison, why did you decide to stop financial support for her daughter?" "Because I finally understood that I wasn't helping a family in need. I was financing 2 lazy adults who saw me only as a source of income." "Can you explain that further?" "For 3 years, I paid all her bills. $42,600. There was never a plan for her to become independent. There was never any genuine gratitude. There were only increasing demands, and when I hesitated just once, I was excluded from his grandson's christening. Mr. Morrison, what motivated you to record the phone conversations? His late wife Helen always said that Jessica had manipulative tendencies. I started recording to understand if my memory was failing or if I was really being manipulated. Chun played another devastating recording, Kevin threatening to sue me for family abandonment if I stopped paying her bills. Your Honor, Chun continued, family abandonment would be if Bruce Morrison failed to fulfill his legal obligations as a father. But Kevin Morrison is not a minor. No law requires a 68-year-old father to finance the adult life of 27-year-old sons-in-law. Dr. Hayes attempted cross-examination, but every question he asked only strengthened my case. Mr. Morrison, don't you feel responsible for his grandson's well-being? I feel complete responsibility. That's why I want Timothy to have parents who work and support themselves, not parasites who live off someone else's retirement. Don't you think it's cruel to cut off support without warning? I think it's cruel to be excluded from his grandson's christening after 3 years of paying all his family's bills. When it was Jessica's turn to testify, she was visibly nervous. Ms. Morrison, when was the last time you called your father without asking for money? She couldn't answer. Ms. Morrison, why wasn't his father invited to Timothy's christening? It was a misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding, or was he not special enough? Her own words, on record. Jessica began to cry, but it was tears of frustration, not regret. Kevin was even worse. When asked why a young healthy man needed to live off his father-in-law's pension, he became defensive and aggressive. I have rights. Bruce always promised to help us. What kind of rights, Mr. Morrison? Family rights. Timothy is his grandson. And that entitles you to his retirement money, her? It entitles us not to be abandoned. Chun looked at the judge. Your Honor, I believe the plaintiff's own words demonstrate her true motivations. Meanwhile, Harold, my former police officer neighbor, had arrived as a witness. His testimony about Jessica's attempts to manipulate neighbors into creating false evidence was devastating. She specifically asked he to say that Bruce seemed confused and forgetful. When he refused, she became angry and said he didn't understand how important it was to protect Bruce from himself. Judge Patterson retired to deliberate for an hour that felt like an eternity. When he returned, his expression was serious but resolute. After reviewing all the evidence presented, this court concludes that Bruce Morrison is in full possession of his mental faculties and has every right to manage his own finances as he sees fit. I felt Linda squeeze my hand. Furthermore, the judge continued, the evidence suggests that this petition was motivated by financial interest, not genuine concern for Mr. Morrison's well-being. Jessica was crying openly now. This court also orders Jessica Morrison and Kevin Morrison to refrain from any contact with Bruce Morrison, except through legal representation, for the next 6 months. Restraining order. He couldn't even call me asking for money. Finally, the judge added in a tone that made my heart race, I am referring the evidence of welfare fraud to the U.S. Attorney's Office for investigation. Kevin turned white as a sheet. Federal fraud meant possible imprisonment. When we left the courthouse, Jessica tried to approach me in the parking lot. Dad, please. Jessica, I said calmly, the judge was very clear about contact. Dad, we're a family. No, Jessica. Family doesn't exclude a grandfather from his grandson's christening. Family doesn't try to steal the dignity of someone who has always given love and support. The real battle had not been just about money or mental competence. It had been about dignity, self-respect, and the fundamental right not to be exploited by the people who should love her most. 6 months after the hearing, Jessica and Kevin faced the full consequences of their actions. The federal investigation revealed 3 years of systematic fraud, $28,000 in social benefits received illegally while living off his money. Kevin was sentenced to 18 months in prison and 3 years of probation. Jessica received 12 months of house arrest and 500 hours of community service. But the harshest punishment came from life itself. Without his financial support, they lost their apartment and had to move into a trailer in the suburbs. Kevin finally got a job at a supermarket, earning minimum wage at the age of 28. As for me, I sold my house and moved into a modern condo downtown. With the money I was no longer wasting on them, I traveled to Europe, something Helen and he had always dreamed of doing together. Linda came to visit me last month. "Bruce, you look 10 years younger," she said as we had coffee on my balcony overlooking the lake. She was right. For the first time in years, I was living for myself. Harold, my neighbor, told me that Jessica had tried to visit him again, looking for information about my new life. When he refused to talk to her, she asked if I seemed regretful or lonely. "I told her you looked like the freest man I've ever met," Harold laughed. The last time I heard anything about Timothy was from Linda, who had run into Jessica at the supermarket. My grandson was growing up healthy, and Kevin was finally being the father the child always deserved to have. I don't feel anger anymore. I feel pity. Pity for two people who traded a real family for a source of income. Who chose exploitation over love. If this story of a grandfather who regained his dignity has touched his, subscribe to the channel for more stories about people who refuse to be victims of her own family. My name is Bruce Morrison. I am 69 years old, and I have finally learned that true love is priceless, and dignity is never for sale. The greatest revenge was not seeing him in prison. It was discovering that I can be perfectly happy without people who only loved him for his money.